Hello and welcome to the first of these short videos introducing the simulator dasim. In this one we'll just see how to get going, how to wire up components and how to do a first simple simulation. If you follow the link from just about anywhere on the module web pages, you'll come up with an introduction screen which looks a bit like this. On the right hand side of the screen here there's a large area on which we'll be constructing the circuit. Results are either given on the circuit itself or in another little window that will appear at the bottom. On the left hand side here we have a set of pull down menus which allow you to control and add components to the simulation. The top item on this menu is called Hide Menus. Click on that and it just makes all the menu bar disappear into these small single letter buttons. It just expands the area available for drawing circuits. If you want the menus back, the important thing to note is that the top button with an M on it stands for menus and brings all the menus back. Right, let us construct our first simulation. If you've got a laptop or a computer handy, it might be a good idea to follow along as I go through this. The first thing we need to do is add some components, and I'll just select the common components here. There are two sets of components, the common ones and the rarer ones that we'll only be using occasionally during the module. Common ones, however, include things like a resistor. You might remember a resistor. Resistors resist the flow of electricity. In the hydraulic model, they correspond to very narrow pipes, which the fluid is trying to force its way down. We'll also put on, just for fun, one of these, an LED, light-emitting diode. And light-emitting diodes, if sufficient current passes through them in the direction of the arrow, they light up. They only allow current to flow through them in that one direction. Not strictly true, they do allow a little bit to flow through in the other direction, but not enough to generate any light. Now, if we have a voltage source, there are several ways to do that. We could put one of these in. That's a battery cell, a 1-volt battery cell at the moment. That will do for now. We could construct a circuit just with these three components. The mouse wheel controls the zoom, so I will use that to make my diagram bigger. If you don't have a mouse wheel, then under the Sim Components memory tab, there's a zoom expand slider which does the same thing. Right, let's wire it up. You wire it up by clicking on the terminals. The terminals are these grey things with the blue dots going around them. Drag away and a wire will come with you. This black line corresponds to a wire. It's a simulation of a wire and it's therefore a perfect wire. It has a resistance of 0. Always thought that's a little bit odd because in the hydraulic model a perfect wire corresponds to an enormously big pipe, whereas a resistor corresponds to a tiny little narrow pipe. But the circuit symbols that we use are sort of the other way round. The wire is just a single line rather than a huge great pipe, and the resistor is sort of looks like a thicker pipe rectangle, but in fact corresponds to a very narrow pipe in the hydraulic model. Anyway, that's just something to get used to. You can wire up circuits by clicking on the terminals and moving the wires across like that. There are a couple of other ways to do it. Once you've placed the component, I could pick up the component, move it back so the two terminals are on top of each other, and move it away again, and a wire would automatically be drawn. That can speed up the wiring up of larger circuits. The automatic wires will try to make the wires on a nice rectangular grid, all horizontal or vertical. And if I click on this and move down to there, it will draw the wire in a nice rectangular framework. If you don't want that for any reason, you can click on one of the vertices of the wire and drag it round somewhere like that. Looks a bit odd to me. So I'll move it back to there again. If I double click on a terminal, on a vertice rather, it will jump back and try to make it into a nice rectangular shape. It's kind of nice to be neat if you can. Right, so how do you actually run a simulation? And the answer is, it's already running. This simulator always runs simulations all the time, so it gives you the answers as quickly as possible. You can't really see what's happening until you configure the output of the simulation to be visible somehow. There's a few ways of doing that. Under sim controls, we could click on animate currents, and we would see that there is a small amount of current flowing around in this direction. Alternatively, we could take a voltmeter or an ammeter, say take that ammeter there. Now an ammeter will measure the current flowing in. I'm double clicking here to make the wires on a rectangular. Ammeter will measure the current flowing in to the red terminal and out from the black terminal. Having the ammeter like this allows me to show you another way that you can wire up components. If I want to place this ammeter in this wire so that the current flows from the voltage cell into the ammeter, out of the ammeter, into the resistor, I don't have to get rid of this wire and then replace it. I can just drop the ammeter onto the wire and it will automatically wire itself up so that the current now goes through the ammeter. You can see an only very small amount of current is flowing. 272.8 femtoamps. That's 10 to the minus 15. One thing I haven't mentioned so far is how to delete wires. You delete wire just by double-clicking on it. Gone. And then I can put it back again by any of those usual techniques. The reason I chose an LED is because something quite fun happens if you do put a substantial amount of current through the LED. This is a 1 volt voltage source. If I made that into a 10 volt voltage source by editing this component, then a lot more current would flow. And the LED lights up red, because if you built this circuit, that LED would now be shining red. Okay, I think that's about all I need to say for a quick introduction to this simulator. There's another few videos coming up which will give you a few more details. In the next one, we're looking at adding, editing, and moving components in a little bit more detail. See you then.